Welcome back, everyone. We have Congressman Kat Cammack with us today. Thank you so much for being with us, Congresswoman.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, tell us what it means to be the youngest Republican woman in Congress, and tell us a little bit about how you got there from high school, college, working in politics, and then running for office.
Well, it's an incredible honor to be the youngest Republican woman in Congress. It is such a humbling experience, and every time I walk through the halls of the Capitol, I get chills because you think of all of the greats that come before you and how you have a very, very big set of shoes to fill. And, as you go to vote, sometimes you walk through Statuary Hall, and, that's where, John Quincy Adams, had his desk at one point in time. And you think of the challenges that they faced in their day, and you look at what we're dealing with today, and it gives you the motivation that, hey, we've seen some tough times before, but we can definitely rise above. And I feel now more than ever that we need young people, we need millennials, we need Gen Zs at the table. And when you look at the voting patterns, right, you have these blocks of folks, millennials, Gen Zs, that when put together are the largest voting bloc in America coming up. And so it's important that we have representation. We have a seat at the table, multiple seats at the table, but there needs to be a recognition of the fact that the policies that we're enacting today and the policies that have been for the last decade, 2 decades, they're not falling on the shoulders of baby boomers. They're falling on the shoulders of us. And so that's why it's important that we get involved now. And that relationship between our fellow Americans that are a little bit older than us is more important than ever, because it used to be, they would make decisions and it would take a long time for these things to enact. Well, things are moving so rapidly now that a $1.9 trillion stimulus package has immediate impacts for us here in America, and particularly young people as we're getting started, buying homes and starting families and going to grad school, or, starting out in the workforce, whatever it may be. That is something that is a direct, all these decisions in Washington have direct impacts. And it's decisions in Washington that actually led me to getting involved in the first place, because I never had really politics as a goal in mind. I grew up daughter of a single mom, working class family. And my goal ultimately, I had a big dream. I wanted to own the Minnesota Vikings. That was my big dream. But my realistic dream was to, go to college. I'm the first in my family to go to college, and then take over the family business, get involved in the oil and gas industry. I'm originally from Denver, and that's a big industry in Colorado. So after college, I was thinking, yeah, that's going to be great. Well, I didn't have that opportunity, let's say. In college, I worked my entire way through. I was a bank teller for a while. I took a full load of classes. I was taking sometimes 16 credit hours. At one point, I did something ridiculous, and I took 21 credit hours. I got a waiver, and I was working a full-time job. And I don't think that that was a very good idea. And I don't recommend that. So please don't do that. But working at the same time that you're going to school is such an important thing. And I did that through high school too. And, so it gives you a bit of a work ethic, and it teaches you that you have to be responsible. And that's so important. But I get to the end of my college career. It's April, it's 2011. I'm getting ready to graduate, and my whole world falls apart. My mom got a phone call that we were losing our family's home, which was a small cattle ranch south of Denver. And it was kind of like a bomb just went off in your little world. Everything around you still moving, but, your whole world has just, been blown into pieces. Yeah. And so it was a pretty surreal experience of 23 days to evict. We have no money. I was paying for gas with like nickels and dimes and quarters. And I don't recommend that, because at the time, gas station attendants, they hated that. They absolutely hated that. And so it was a challenging time for sure. We ended up moving into an extended stay motel, and lived there for gosh, 4.5 months. And it was a really challenging time. You're homeless and the job market is crap. You're getting interviews, but you're not actually able to land a job because, everything's a recession. And that's when I got a call from a family friend, and he said, my uncle's running for Congress in Florida. I think you'd be a good fit. And that's how I ended up in Florida. So, unmarried and no kids, it was an opportunity of a lifetime to really pick up what I had and drive across the country and just take a chance on a guy who really had a passion to do something incredible for his country. And I was so angry with big government because it was a big government program that ended up taking our ranch.
Yeah.
It was a signature Obama housing initiative that was an 1,800-page bill that no one had bothered to read. And they ended up passing this legislation. And what it did was it incentivized big banks to push people out of their homes because it was a tax credit for every home that they couldn't save. So you look at how government can impact people's lives so personally. It's not just, taxes. It's not just regulations. It's people's livelihoods. It's the very homes that they live in. And big government is dangerous and out of touch. And that's really what has inspired me into a life of service, because I never want anyone else to feel that way. I never want anyone to experience a loss of everything that they have worked for their entire life. And so that's what has led me to today. And you talk about young people being involved. I think back to that election with Congressman Yoho, and I was the only paid staffer, and they really couldn't afford to pay me that much. And so let that be a lesson to you right there that, you can get offered a job and it may be like $500 a month. And in my case, I think I made like $800 a month or something, and not really enough to live off of. Right. So I was living in the guest house. If you are doing something that you're passionate about and you're motivated and it moves you to get up every morning and it's driving you to really do something incredible and meaningful, the money will come. Don't ever take on a job because you're like, oh, I'm going to make a ton of money, but I'm going to be miserable. Right. That's something that I've seen a lot of really incredible people turn away from their passion of wanting to serve or do something because they're scared that they're turning away money. And that's really sad. So I've made a career now of being an advocate for people in my community. And it's incredible to be the youngest Republican woman, because I think that there's definitely a gap there. And I see a lot of young people in particular. We've been taught our whole life that you have to wait in line, when we're kids and, in kindergarten, what's the first thing your teacher tells you? Well, we're going to line up and you're going to stand in a line and, then you're going to go out to recess. So our whole lives we're taught, we're conditioned, stand in line and wait your turn. And I think now more than ever, we need people who are willing to step out of line and say, I feel very strongly about this. And so I'm going to step out of line and take my shot. And so that would be my number one piece of advice for young people. And I tell folks all the time that if come January 3rd of 2023, when I swear in as a sophomore in Congress, if I'm still the youngest Republican woman in Congress, then I have not done my job. Yeah. I have failed my generation, because I don't want that title for another 2 years. We need to have the next generation at the table. So that's something that I'm adamantly focused on as part of my role in bringing the next generation of conservatives along with me for this ride.
Yeah, love that tenacity. I mean, you could have waited behind a state rep or state senator or someone else in your district that could have claimed that they had more experience than you. But in reality, you have so much experience, real life experience, that was obviously very valuable. So just before we wrap up this part of the interview, what would you tell young people? What are some of the things that they need to be doing? And obviously you showed honor to your predecessor. You worked loyally for him for so many years, and then in a lot of ways you were rewarded for it. And so what would you tell young people about working with other politicians, and what would you tell young people about maybe some of the things that you did specifically politically to get to where you are now?
I see, and that's a really great question, because not a lot of people ask that, about, how do you move from step to step. One of the most jarring experiences that I had as a deputy chief of staff, working for a member of Congress, was one of my first, gosh, it had to have been first month or two on the job. And I heard from a fellow staffer, they said, if you don't have your next two jobs lined up from where you are now, you're doing it wrong. And that really rubbed me the wrong way, because in my mind, I'm thinking, we're here to serve. We have a purpose. And some people want to be, a staffer for their entire life, or they want to use it as a stepping stone to get to a higher office or run for office one day themselves. And that's fine. But the motivation for that person in that moment in time was not, I care about the community that my boss is sent here to Washington to represent. It was, what can this job do for me? And it's the mentality of, I need to strategically move myself around so that I check boxes and I have a resume that looks good when I run for office. Voters see through that. That's fake. Yeah. And that is the BS that people are sick and tired of. They're sick and tired of people who have just climbed ladders their whole life, right, and said, well, I'm going to do this because it'll look good when I go to run for office. If that's what you're about, then you don't need to be serving. Right. I want to see young people involved and go work for, if they want experience with, their local member of Congress, dig in to what makes that district tick. What are you doing to be a value add of providing service and representation to that district? Not how many people can I, get linked up with so that, I can have a stronger network. If you're doing the job with the best of intentions, that stuff will come. Yeah. You will get that naturally. But when you seek it out above the service of the district, right, it's disingenuous and it doesn't end well. So my advice would be, find something that you're very passionate about. If you're passionate about education, go look at your local superintendent. Go to your state's, your state secretary of education. Work for a member of your state house or your member of Congress that is directly tied into education. If you have a real passion for military, and maybe you've served or you are serving, there's military fellowships that you can do. Yeah. Really dig into an issue area. And I tell this to people all the time. When I first was hired as a chief and was in charge of hiring an entire team, we shied away from people who had poli-sci degrees. We wanted people that had gone to school and had, that's the other interview coming through.
Oh, no worries. Well, we're almost done here.
They must have tried. They must have tried multiple times. Because I had it on Do Not Disturb. But to finish that thought, the thing that we did was, if you had a biology degree, we love that, because you're working on issue. When you're working in politics, you're not working on politics, you're working on issues, right? Science, healthcare, education, defense, national security. These are all real issues. So go after a degree that you're passionate about, and the poli-sci aspect, if you want to minor in it, that's great. But go after the issues that are significant to poli-sci, right? Good. If that makes sense.
That's good. Well, final two questions, the Biden border crisis, and what about the direction of the Republican Party going forward? Obviously, Trump is going to be a big factor, and how we navigate that and come together as a Republican Party.
I think it starts with the administration, the Biden administration, admitting that we do have a crisis. It is, in fact, a crisis. And I had an opportunity to question Secretary Mayorkas last week as a member of the Homeland Security Committee, and basically put him on the spot. If FEMA has been deployed to the border, that stands to reason there's an emergency. And he said, no, they have a real problem with words. they have no problem pushing people to announce their pronouns, but they have a real problem with the word emergency and crisis. And I think that's a disservice. This isn't a Republican or a Democrat issue. This is an American issue.
Yeah.
And border security is a fundamental responsibility, a basic responsibility of the federal government. So if we can't get this right, all else is downhill. So it's something that Republicans are going to hold the Biden administration their feet to the fire on this. We're going to be working very, very closely with our homeland counterparts. I myself will be going to the border. So this is all things that's going to be playing out for the next several months, because it's not just a national security crisis. This is a humanitarian crisis. 1 in 3 women are being sexually assaulted coming over the border. You have children that are being trafficked by the cartels. It is the most disgusting thing that I have seen in a long time. And the lack of concern or response by the administration should be alarming to everyone, regardless of your political affiliation. And you talked a little bit about the President Trump and the future of the party. I think the president's going to have an immense role to play in the future of the party and really crafting that next generation. I'm so sorry that the next guy is trying to fall. So that's a challenge that we're going to face as far as getting a cohesive conservative message moving forward. And the thing I tell folks is, listen, we're in the minority right now. It's very easy for us to be united because at the end of the day, we're powerless until we take the House back. We have all of the advantage in the world at this point in 2 years to take the House back. And that's really when we can start holding this administration accountable and holding their feet to the fire rather than just being the party of no. So we need to just come together as conservatives. I think President Trump did an incredible job. He had 4 years of incredible accomplishments. And the way we honor that moving forward is by championing the America First agenda going forward. Not shunning it. So that's where we're headed as a party. I think young people are going to be a huge part of that and really changing the face of the Republican Party. And I'm excited to be a part of that.
Awesome. Well, Congresswoman, how can those that want to give to your campaign give, and how can they follow you on social media before we let you go?
Follow us. Our handle is @Cammack. We are on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We have an incredible comms team that is putting out content regularly. One of the best ways you can help us is by sharing that content. Of course, on Instagram, I actually respond personally to messages. So if you have folks that reach out, it will be me responding, not one of my team members. Also, you can give. Every dollar helps. So catforcongress.com, you can donate right there. And it's such a huge, important part of the process to help conservatives as we go up against the big machine that is the Washington establishment. So I appreciate you having me on today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. We hope to see you July 16th and 17th in the Houston area. If time permits, for our Texas Youth Summit. Thanks for coming on. Hope you have a blessed rest of your day. God bless you.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good one.